Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Bobbi Pominville, and I'm your art reporter. And I have invited back one of my favorite interviewers, John H. Potter, Executive Director Emeritus of the Phipps Center for the Arts. Yes, he just retired, and I'm delighted to have you here, John.
I'm delighted to be here, Bobbi.
We might have a few different questions this year, but I won't make it difficult for you, don't worry.
Thank you.
First, I must say kudos to you for the completion of 35 years as director of the Phipps Center for the Arts. I have actually crossed paths with you so many times in those years. And it's just been delightful working with you.
Well, same here, Bobbi. It's mutual.
And some of it was at the Music Council. Some of it was on the board of directors. And I was lucky to be able to do that a couple times under your leadership. And I have just enjoyed the Phipps Center. Has been such a big part of my life. And I think what you've done with programming and everything else has just been exemplary.
Well, as you well know, Bobbi, the programming is a result of the 5 councils that are all working year-round to come up with the appropriate shows and
Yes.
performances and artists and staffing them. So it's a shared effort.
Definitely is, and I did get in on that a little bit for the Music Council. So now I would think that you have programmed everything through the end of this year, correct?
We have a complete 2020-21 season that may not be possible
Yes.
in its entirety. Let's put it that way. So we'll see what transpires.
Yes, and these are kind of uncertain times, and I do realize that, but I assume that some of it will come back again next year, but I don't want to wait again to sing.
I hope you don't have to.
I hope not. Okay, now we're going to reminisce a little and then maybe find out your plans for the future. But first, I was wondering how you were appointed to the job at the Phipps.
I just reread the newspaper article from May of 1985 that said that there were 37 applicants and it was a 7-month search. And how they came up with me at the end of that time, I don't know, but I was very fortunate. So it's kind of funny. I had several interviews, and then the final interview was with the entire board. And every single board member asked me at least one question. And then we went back around the table if there were any second questions, and most did. And I came home and I said, well, I think that went well. I'm just not sure if I want to work there.
Really?
And Marie Blakeman called and acknowledged that it was a grueling interview and said, if you still want to work here, we'd love to have you. So
Oh, wonderful.
it was indicative of Marie in that she acknowledged what it was like for me, and then was very gracious.
Wow, I didn't know it was going to be that kind of an interview. That's very strenuous. I would say that's more strenuous than getting my teaching job for sure. But anyway, yes, Marie Blakeman, I'm so glad you mentioned her because she was head of the board at one time when I was on the board of directors. And it was quite a delight to be working on that board under her. It was really, she's so impressive, as you well know. Well, good. I'm not a bit surprised you got the job. Now, I was going to ask you, you were program director for so many years of programming, you were head of that all. So tell us which programs were your favorites?
That is so difficult to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually have given it some thought and looked over past season brochures. And I just would mention a few things as quickly as possible, but one of the most, I think my first emergency was the first year I was there, and we had scheduled Here's Love, a holiday musical for the holiday show. The community theater, the drama council had scheduled that, and we couldn't cast it. And so there was an emergency meeting, and we substituted A Christmas Carol for it, and it was a great success. And I think we extended the run of it, and it was kind of a baptism of fire. So that was a memorable one. Next summer, or the summer after, I directed my first show, which was on Golden Pond, and it featured Jack Erdman and Edna Gwynn. And that was a very special experience. Then over the years, at least 25 times, if not more, we presented the Upper Mississippi Jazz Band every spring. And that was in addition to our regular schedule. It was an add-on. And what a wonderful time that was every single time. People came in, multiple performances per year. And people came in just knowing that they were going to have a good time. And then, just at intermission and after the show, they just so happy. And shows like that just lift your spirits. And then in contrast, in 1990, we presented a relatively new show called The Shana Mädel, which is Yiddish for a pretty girl. And it's about members of a Jewish family that reunite after the Holocaust and after World War II. And it's terribly moving, it's insightful, it's all the things that great drama should be. And at the time, again, it was a relatively new show, and it was quite relevant. 30 years later, just this last season, we produced it again. And it had, if not the same, a greater impact, and the relevance was still there. Not only for the Jewish story, but for the immigrant story, for those that were displaced. So just my kudos to the Drama Council for choosing it and producing it both times. When I think of the organ, I think of Gaylord Carter, and you may remember Gaylord.
Yes.
Gaylord played the first organ concert here, I think, or the second. I wasn't around at that time, but he was a kid performing out in Hollywood for the original runs of these productions of these films in the 1920s. And so Gaylord lived to be over 100, and played up until he couldn't play anymore, which was well into his 90s. And he was actually the favorite organist of, now I'm blanking on his name, Lloyd. Oh goodness, that's sad, but I can't remember his name now. But a famous silent film comedian. And Lloyd, I can't remember his name. So he played for him at Lloyd's request. And then his career was revived in the 60s. And he played at least half a dozen times at the Phipps Center. Just a wonderful man. He does open. So he played on the Amos and Andy radio show, and he'd open all of his concerts with that song, with the theme to the Amos and Andy show. And he said, my mother always said, start the recital with something you know well. Just a sweet, dear man.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
then I think of, when we first flew Peter Pan, the children's theater. And actually that predated me as well, but since then there's been a couple of other productions of it, and that was so exciting to bring in a flying company to actually fly Peter and the kids.
I
And
remember how excited we were when we heard, and I said, well, wait a minute now, is Peter Pan going to fly? And they said, well, of course.
well, yeah.
That's what he does. And I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen with that.
Indeed.
That
It always worked out well. It's very magical.
Oh, it is.
I think of Linda Kelsey when she was living in Hudson, and she directed the show for us, and she also did a premiere production of The Belle of Amherst, a one-person film. And then that went on to Park Square, and then I think they toured that as well. But a very special time, and it was great to have her kids involved in the Children's Theater as well. And then I think of Garrison Keillor, who moved back to the area from New York in the early 90s, and we were fortunate to have him do a benefit performance for our capital campaign in 92. And that was just so much fun to have him here. And he was so gracious in that he was literally the last one to leave that evening. He spoke to everyone who wanted to speak to him. He signed autographs. He was just charming. And of course, I think of all of the New Year's Eve performances for at least 25 years with Colleen Ray and her family and her friends and her colleagues. And it's a different show every year, and she's been doing it at least 25 years. And Colleen, just terrific, wonderful musician, wonderful friend. And that might be the end of my list right now. But I could go on, and I don't like to mention names because there's so many that I could mention, and it just goes on and on. 35 years is a long time.
That's right. And you get to know these people that come over to the Phipps, and you're saying, some of them are so gracious. Well, just about all of them are that way. And they love to come to the theater here. They just enjoy the area and everything.
Well, it's such an intimate stage. The main stage is really, you're so close to the audience, and the audience really is a factor in the show.
That's right.
You can see them, you can hear them breathing, you can hear them laughing, you can hear if they aren't laughing. So,
well, I have to reminisce just a little because when my dad was staying with us for a while, we brought him to the New Year's Eve show. He was a singer. He played alto saxophone in a dance band. I can't tell you how he loved that show. He just raved and raved. It just he talked about it all week.
Excellent.
And then I think about how the audiences kept coming and coming, and every year, and then you would add another show.
Right.
And it was just amazing how popular that was.
Well, so that reminds me, I knew Debbie O'Keefe, Colleen's sister.
Yes.
And she said, well, you should really meet my sister, and she's got some ideas for a show. And I thought, all right. And then we came up with the idea of doing a New Year's Eve show, and I just thought, wow, who is going to go to this? But let's try it.
Think.
Yeah, the rest is history.
It's so popular. It's like, I don't think there's hardly anybody in Hudson that hasn't seen it. And people come, like now they come from all areas of Minnesota too. So you've expanded the theater and the offerings a lot.
Well, the councils have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you have to take credit for that, John. You really do.
I was in the mix, so thank you.
Yes, you were. Well, now, one of my favorite things was going to the high school musical, and you were the outstanding director of that. And I just thought that was so amazing that you were working with high schoolers and you loved it, I'm sure. They're quite a delight to work with.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they took you very seriously and did their, best performances and all. So let's reminisce about that a little. Now, this may go on for a while, but what shows were your favorites?
I can't do that, Bobbi, because
You can't
I truly can't. So when I think of the high school shows, my favorite is whatever one I'm working on at the time. And I'm totally serious about that. And I love working with high school students and young people. I mean, the great rewards that come from that. They're so eager.
Yeah.
There's such a purity. And I think of, amateur, and the root of amateur is lover, Latin for lover. So just the purity of wanting to do theater, of just the wholehearted enthusiasm and effort into it. And so, we work really hard and we have a lot of fun, I hope. Oh. And rehearsals to me are as much, if not more, enjoyable than the performances themselves. But I always look forward to it. And this season I was slated to direct The Addams Family. But being a musical, I don't think that's going to be possible. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
So that would be for high school?
Yes.
So will you come back and do it next year, maybe?
I sure hope so. Thank you, Bobbi.
Well,
we'll have to see you. But I would love to, yes.
I hope you can. But that music is just in my head right now. The minute you mentioned the Addams Family, I mean, at elementary school, they loved it. Every Halloween, I would play it. They would sing it. And it was really a highlight in October. But anyway, so you won't tell me one or two, huh?
I can't. The first show I directed was Aladdin outside in the park during what was then some iteration of the Spirit of the St. Croix art fair. Yeah. Although I don't think it was called that at that time, but it was something. We did it in the round, and people gathered together, and it was great fun. And then the first main stage, Then the first main stage show I did was Cinderella. Oh. And then the last one was Little Mermaid, which was actually the second time that I did that. And I just, I love all of them. I truly do.
They are wonderful. Wonderful shows, and a lot of those I did myself at elementary level, but of course they were very reduced as script. But of course we'd learn all the songs. But every one of those is my favorite.
Yes.
And my last year of teaching, I did all 6 grades, like K through 5, and I did my favorite shows from all the years I taught.
I remember that.
One of them was Cinderella. Oh, that was a tough script, though. It was really hard to memorize for 4th graders. But, oh well, we struggled through somehow.
That would be very challenging, Bobbi.
Oh, very much.
I've never worked. I worked with, they might have been elementary age. It was a show called All the Way Home. Oh. And I worked with 2 very young brothers in that, and they were a handful.
Oh, I can imagine. Yes, a lot of things happen. So I commiserate with you a little, because I know there were times when I couldn't get my student to go up on the stage. They would have such a panic attack in fear. And I remember the one young man missed his part, and we couldn't go back, and it was sad, but well, it was a lesson learned, I guess. Well, okay, my next question is, I'm not being too hard on you, I don't think.
Not so far.
You really were always looking for innovative and popular programs in all areas of the arts. And of course, you have so much expertise in drama. And I really think of you as being an expert in music too. And I love the arts. So everything that goes on there in the arts is just perfect for me. So now here's kind of a serious question, I guess. How important was it to schedule programs and balance that budget?
Well, Bobby, that's a loaded question, as you well know from serving on the board and from serving on the
Yes.
Choral Society, and now what used to be the Oratorio Society.
Yes.
There's always a balance, and sometimes you schedule a production or you schedule a performance because it's the right thing to do, and it may not break even, but it serves the mission. And there's any number of examples of that, but there aren't a lot of them because you have to have the shows that also paid the overhead. And so that's just the nature of the business. And I think certainly the Choral Society is an example of that, of folks that don't have an opportunity otherwise to perform music of that caliber, or in a setting where they don't have to audition for it, and then to play with outstanding instrumentalists accompanying them. Very special experience, and while the audiences may not be huge, the rewards are great for those that perform and for those in attendance. So yeah, that's just one example, but we've taken a few calculated risks over the years. Yes.
Yes, definitely. I, was aware of that several times, and I, of course, was up very close with the Choral Society, and in many times a little disappointed in the audience. But people have such a fear of classical music, and I don't know why. It just really is tough sometimes to get them out. But I just really enjoyed every one of it. Every one we did was just a highlight to me.
Well, and I would add, I truly believe, and again, I haven't mentioned Tom Dolly. Tom Dolly, the longtime conductor of the Choral Society and Oratorio Society, and founder of the festival chorus. Every year he raises the bar, and the chorus responds to that challenge, and every year it's better and better and better. And wow, what a great experience it is for everybody.
I know, and it's difficult for me to think that we didn't do Mozart's Requiem. We were so well prepared that we were almost ready to perform earlier. But we kept working and working and perfecting, and that's what it's all about. Keep working. And even that amount of time spent on that masterwork was absolutely rewarding.
Yes, of course.
Many people have mentioned it to me.
So I was just going to say, so you're referring to what was scheduled last spring, and then
Mozart's Requiem.
We couldn't do it, and we postponed it to this next spring, so we'll see what transpires. Yes.
Yes. And I do think, too, the festival chorus and Tom Dolly, we have pretty much worked up to our potential. And, with new people coming in, and Tom has innovated the program a little bit more, too.
Yes.
And sometimes the people want to hear the old music and the popular things. And now it's been kind of a mixture of everything. Mm-hmm. And I've enjoyed that. I think it's going in the right direction. I I can't believe I've been doing that so long, since the first year, both choirs. And I just have a hard time giving up my singing now. It's been tough for me.
Indeed.
So anyway, I know I can always turn on the CD and the stereo and whatever, but it's just not the same.
It's not.
So you recently trained in the new director.
I wouldn't say trained in, no.
Oh, not really. He didn't need training?
Sure. Well, he came with far more experience than I did when I started the position. But
tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we overlapped a couple of weeks, and then I'll continue to be around as a resource when needed.
Oh, yeah.
His name is Darby Lunsford.
Yes.
He's a resident of Stillwater. His most recent position was the Chief Marketing Officer for the Minnesota Opera, where he actually had a staff and a budget larger than the Phipps Centers.
Oh, my.
Which is pretty funny, but yes,
Yeah.
he certainly has that experience. Prior to that, he was the marketing director of the Children's Theater Company of Minneapolis. And they hired him because he was a consultant for them. And then they liked him so much that they asked him to stay on as the marketing director. He's been a consultant all over the country and Canada. And he also was the marketing director of the Shakespeare Theater in Washington, D.C. So that's his primary background, but he has experience in all aspects of the center's programming. And I think he's got a great skill set. I think he's got the right personality for the job as well. So the fact that he's still around after 2 weeks, after sharing it with me, I think says a lot about him. So I really have great hopes for him. I think he can grow the organization once he's allowed to, once this pandemic is past. I think there's all sorts of possibilities.
Well, I think that's absolutely wonderful. He sounds so well prepared.
He is.
I mean, so many different areas. I mean, everything you mentioned just sounds like a whole book in itself. Children's theater, I mean, Shakespeare out in Washington, D.C., everything is just so impressive there.
Well, and I forgot to mention that I believe he started his career doing marketing for Broadway and off-Broadway shows.
Oh, my word. So he's been all over.
He has.
So you're talking New York now.
Yep.
So that would be quite a job to be able to do all that. So he's going to be really good at marketing, right?
I would certainly think so.
Now, do you think he has a special talent in music?
I don't know what his musical talents are, but I know that he has a degree in theater.
Okay.
So that's his background as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if he also has some musical abilities.
Wonderful.
And certainly an appreciation of.
Well, I'm so impressed with what you've said here and it's going to be really fun to welcome him when our paths do cross.
Well, that's the other thing, is we'd love to have some public welcoming for him, but that isn't really possible right now. But as soon as we can do that.
Hopefully, I hope that happens. Oh, that's great information, John. I'm excited. So now my last question. I don't know if you're going to answer me very much, but I do want to know what you plan to do now.
Well,
maybe our paths will cross on a board or something. I don't know.
I certainly hope they will. I've told folks that I want to do the things that I enjoyed in my youth, as much as I'm able. So a friend loaned me a bike And I actually went for a wonderful bike ride the other day. And I seriously, I hadn't done that in 44 years. And then literally yesterday, I got a trumpet for the first time in 44 years. And I could play a scale on it, so I'm very encouraged.
Oh my word.
I want to play that. And I was scheduled to direct a couple of things this season, and it doesn't look as though that's going to happen, but I would love to do that in the future. And under the right conditions, I'd like to perform again. So those are just a few of the things that I just want to have fun. Yes,
and you should do the things you love. I mean,
Indeed.
You say you love those things through your youth, but I mean, I know I really feel that way. I think I was never doing gardening until I retired.
Yeah.
Then I took it up, and it was just something that fed me, and I just have to do it almost every day.
Yes.
And now that
is
one of my favorite things right now. But of course, I have continued my music, and at the end there in December, when things kind of closed down after that, I was actually singing in 4 choirs.
I was just going to say, you've had a wonderful retirement. So if I can do half as well as you.
Yeah. So your drama and then your directing skills, that sounds wonderful. Well, are you going to tell us where you're going to direct?
Well, I had 2 shows for this season at the Phipps. But then, as I was about to put my resume out there, pandemic hit. So,
yes,
folks aren't really looking for directors right now. But when they start looking, I'll get my resume out.
Good, because I think you'll really enjoy that, and then you won't have all the other pressures of that other job.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And you will have time, and it's a wonderful thing when you first have that time to do exactly what you want.
Indeed.
And I know you enjoyed your job like I enjoyed mine, but yeah, it's a really good time for you to do everything you wanted to do. So that sounds great. I just hope everything is wonderful for you.
Well, thank you.
I know it will be. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you.
I'm sure of it.
Because every year I've interviewed you about the programming for so long, and I'll miss that. But I'm sure I will find out from the new person.
You will. You'll really enjoy working with Darby, and I'm confident that our paths will cross.
Well, John, it's time to thank you so much for being so brave and coming here and sharing all of this with us. And I have totally enjoyed talking to you.
Same here, Bobbi.
And I hope that our audience enjoys hearing the show today. A little different side of Mr. Potter, but very enjoyable to learn more about him. So thank you for listening.